Hi, in this video, I will be going over our work, rejection sampling IMLE, designing priors for better few-shot image synthesis. Why is few-shot generation important? Well, in many cases, you do not have a lot of training examples to begin with. An example would be the task of personalization. Suppose you want to emulate the types of edit a particular user has made, and the user has only made edits to a few images. So you do not have a lot of examples to begin with. It can also be the case that the training data is hard to collect. For example, you want to synthesize images for rare conditions like near misses in the autonomous driving scenario. Lastly, the training data set can be expensive to create. For example, you want to train a 3D generative model, which obviously requires 3D objects. Now, creating these 3D objects involves expensive manual labor or running computationally expensive reconstruction algorithms. It turns out that the generative models that are effective in the large-scale setting do not perform very well in the few-shot setting. For instance, let's consider diffusion models. Here we have a dataset of 10K data points, with each data point denoted by a green square. So we can train a diffusion model on this dataset and then sample from it. And on the right, you can see the denoising process involved with sampling from a diffusion model. And you can see the samples closely match the data distribution. But what happens if we have significantly less number of data points? So using the same dataset of 10K points, you can subsample that dataset and get a dataset of 20 data points. And the dataset is actually of the same shape. I mean, both of these datasets look like an infinity symbol. Now what we would do is we can train a diffusion model, the same diffusion model, on these two different datasets. And then we can sample from those learned models. And on the right, you can see the denoising process. And voila, you get different results. For the few-shot case, the learned distribution does not look like the data distribution at all. So it clearly means that diffusion models have a problem learning a distribution which has less number of data points. What other kind of generative models can we use? Well, GAN happens to be a popular generative model, and they use an adversarial objective for training. But the issue with GAN is mode collapse, in which the learned distribution only covers a few modes of the actual data distribution. So on the right, you can see that the learned distribution completely ignores the left side of the data distribution. In order to address the issue of mode collapse in GANs, a new kind of generative model was proposed, which is called Implicit Maximum Likelihood Estimation. And as you can see in the video, the distribution learned by IMLE covers all the modes compared to the GAN. However, in existing IMLE approaches, we observe an issue which we call the misalignment issue. For example, consider an IMLE model that has been trained using 2D Gaussian prior. On the left, you can see the latent space used by this IMLE objective, with each dot representing the latent codes that was used for training. And on the right, you can see the samples from the Gaussian prior, which we will encounter at inference. Clearly, there's a misalignment between two. For example, there are gaps in the latent space at training, which means that when at testing you sample from these gaps, the model has never seen these samples and gives arbitrary outputs, which leads to bad samples. In order to address this misalignment issue, we propose a novel approach. During training, we change the prior such that for all data points, we only select samples which are at least epsilon away from all data points. So this epsilon can be shown on the figure on the right, by these gray circles. So we only select points which for training, indicated by the blue star, that are at least epsilon away from the training data points, which are denoted by the green squares. This new objective has a clear geometric interpretation. For the vanilla IMLE case, the nearest neighbor picked, or the sample chosen to be trained, is pretty close to the data point. And you can see that the arrow which indicates the loss is pretty low. However, in our case, the sample chosen to be trained is always epsilon away. This means that the loss per data point is sufficiently large, which leads to meaningful updates to the model parameters. As a result, the distribution learned by our model is better than the vanilla case. And here is a video that shows the training progress of the two models. We can see this in latent space. The latent codes used by rejection sampling IMLE are more faithful or are more aligned to the latent code sampled at inference. We demonstrate the effectiveness of our approach using 9 few-shot image synthesis datasets. These are the samples from the datasets, and on the right you can find a table showing the number of images for each dataset. This is a table that shows the performance of our method compared to the baseline associated with this task, and we see an average decrease of 45.9% in FID across dataset compared to the next best baseline. We demonstrate the qualitative performance of our method using something we call the visual recall test. Using trained models of the baseline, we sample 1,000 images and store these images in separate databases. Next, using an image from the actual dataset, we query these databases and find the nearest neighbor in the samples using this query. So we have demonstrated that in this figure. And as you can see, our method produces images which are, one, realistic, meaning that they have high precision. They're also close to the query, which means that they have high recall. And finally, they are diverse, which says that the model is not overfitting. Here is another example using this test. Finally, we show results of interpolation in the latent space. And as you can see, these interpolations are smooth. I hope you liked this video. You can learn more about this project using the QR code provided or visit our project website. Thank you.